He's one of South Africa's most interesting young minds. He's an activist and an analyst. In today's episode, we are going to get into the Mkhwanazi Commission, all that's flowed from that, as well as Helen Zille's ambitious Joburg campaign. There is so much happening in South African politics, and I'm glad to be joined by Otsile Nkadimeng to explore it. Otsile, welcome to SMWX.
Hi, Sizwe. Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you here. The Mkhwanazi Commission has really captured the imagination of South Africans. And I wonder what your key takeaways from the Mkhwanazi Commission are so far.
It has the makings of a criminal novel. There is everything you need in there: political interference, mob interference, the security cluster being taken over by criminal syndicates. I mean, one would think this is the script for Narcos South Africa, given just all of the explosive details that not only came out in General Mkhwanazi's initial press conference, but so far in his testimony and through the testimony of Fane Masemola.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's start with Mkhwanazi's testimony because we got a lot of fascinating revelations there. It's interesting to me because when you're in a commission, you always feel like, oh, I'm not really learning anything new. But when you go back, you actually realize different pieces of the puzzle have been put together. What stood out from what Mkhwanazi said that you think we need to consider?
For me, the most concerning part is that there seemed in his testimony to be a lack of proper communication between the levels of authority in our security cluster, specifically case being the political killings task team and all of the dockets that had existed. We see a broken chain of these dockets leaving KwaZulu-Natal, heading to Pretoria, and seemingly sitting there and doing nothing in Pretoria, and then returning to Mkhwanazi's and the political killings task team's desks, and seeming that there's no development, there's no progress. There's a lack of coherent communication, in my assessment, between the levels in the security cluster, the policing structures. Specifically, if you are going to be collaborating on something as important as political killings, there must be a set agenda item, as in what is it you are taking these dockets to do, what is it you're assessing, and in returning them, when General Mkhwanazi and the political killings task team do their audit, they must find that there is something that has developed out of those dockets that you can hand back to say, no, KwaZulu-Natal, we were aiding you in this way. It seems that this was interference to jam up quite a lot of the investigations, interference to see where the task team was getting with some of these investigations, to see who were the people that were fingered. There's a lack of coherent communication. Firstly, as it has to do with the political killings task team and the dockets that were taken from KwaZulu-Natal to Pretoria. Yeah. Now, they were taken for a set reason. That's what they told General Mkhwanazi and the political killings task team. But what we know now is that those dockets sat there for weeks turning into months, and did nothing, just gathered dust. Why was that? Why would they halt, or in this case of the investigations, why would they take the dockets away to saying they're going to go assess them in Pretoria, keep them there for months, stopping the investigation, bring it to a standstill effectively because the dockets are not there, and thus creating room for other things to happen in many of these investigations? That's the first thing. The second thing is, I think the arm of the police service in Pretoria and the arm of the police service in KwaZulu-Natal are not communicating, in the sense that Pretoria maybe is looking for a specific outcome. KwaZulu-Natal, perhaps, is trying to avoid a specific outcome. And that communication, I think, is what leads to this breakdown, effectively, in the investigative process, and leads to quite a lot of manipulation. I think it's not lost to many South Africans who know that inherently the South African police service has lost quite a lot of trust and credibility because of the way in which investigations are carried out, that there are certain outcomes that come about because of interference for a specific reason, but that's covered up very well. So there's no communication. There are other agendas at play. Yeah. And those agendas I'm still yet to see who they're actually serving. We have some key figures who are emerging, names that are being named, people that are being denied bail, but we are yet to fully see who are the key actors, what are their interests, and who are their collaborators within the state machinery that are letting them do this.
Absolutely. I mean, Uncle Cyril is a figure who has come up a number of times in the commission. How do you see this impacting the president? And I was actually looking at the parliamentary committee, which is going to meet again. Hey, this parliamentary committee of ours. It's meeting again on Friday. And they've drawn up a list of prospective new witnesses that they want. And they've also got the president's name there. Now, it remains to be seen whether they will actually because they're finalizing the list. But Mkhwanazi's asked a lot of questions about what Ramaphosa knew about the disbandment. Masemola then said there was this conversation with the president, but it kind of ended in an indeterminate way. Yeah, how does this impact on the president?
Well, I'm tempted to say it is not yet concluded.
Sure.
So, similar to what we saw with Phala, I think the president will give the appearance of wanting to facilitate the process, helping, but I do think there is so much damning and damaging information that he himself potentially knows, because there are so many key people linked to the ANC, linked to CR17, linked to the funds that funded the 2024 elective campaign of the ANC, that perhaps he would not be keen to go. Now, I know the Madlanga Commission, it is actually, you can get arrested for not showing up to that commission of inquiry. I'm not sure if that's the same for the Adhoc committee in Parliament. But I'd recommend that they do that, because I think where South Africans are right now is that they need the president to take them into his confidence. We need all of the witnesses that are called, not just before the ad hoc committee, but also the Madlanga Commission, the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, to take the nation into their confidence, because the idea that a criminal syndicate has infiltrated the highest echelons of our government, the president might be involved. Ministers, I must say allegedly, as a law student, I don't want to get, I don't want to catch any cases.
Sure.
Ministers are allegedly involved, DGs are allegedly involved, generals, party officials. I mean, all of this spells that the country's rotten to the core. And so, in a very indirect way of answering your question, I do expect that the president will give the appearance of cooperation. I do hope that he does go and he does answer all of the questions. And I do hope that the members of parliament, not just from his own bench, but from the other benches, don't take this as a political moment, but take this as a serious opportunity to probe.
Yeah. What are your hopes for the parliamentary inquiry? You know, I'm starting to get a bit worried myself, because they've taken eons to just agree on the witness list. I'm not convinced every member knows how to use Zoom. And then you've got, you know, all these political conflicts, not just with the ANC. I mean, the DA now has to decide, you know, on Diane Collar Barnard. Apparently we're going to hear what they come up with. And so we've got these two very similar but also quite different things happening in parallel. We've got this very lawyerly commission on the one side, and then we've got this extremely political inquiry on the other side. So yeah, what are you thinking as we gear up for this parliamentary committee, and what are your hopes and what are your fears?
My fears are that it won't take off. That my biggest fear is that they've delayed for how many months now?
Yeah.
They failed to get the right ICT infrastructure. The witness list has been debated hundreds of times. The chair, the members of that committee have been spoken about in very disparaging ways by other members within that committee. There's already political dynamics that have taken hold, you know. One is tempted to say, I'm scared it's not going to take off because people are deliberately trying to make it not take off.
That is the scary worry, actually.
That's the scary worry, because you are seeing a pace here that is glacial. You're seeing a pace here that is intentionally meant to frustrate the process. And there is a deadline that this ad hoc committee has.
Yeah, they were supposed to be done by the 15th of next month.
When they're not going to get that.
Like,
they're
we
not
haven't
going
even
to get
started
that.
yet. Yeah.
At the time we're recording this, it's the 25th of September. They're not going to get there in time. So my biggest fears are that already the entire thing has imploded. But on the other end, my hopes are that the members of that ad hoc committee will be able to perhaps synthesize to what exactly they want out of that. Obviously, they have massive terms of reference, which again took them a very long time to determine.
Yeah.
But ultimately, out of the terms of reference, every member of that committee has a list of what they want checked.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that they should be very efficient in trying to check that list, because I think in some ways this is going to be a assessment of the future of accountability in South African politics. Because right now where we are is, if people see the entire political apparatus as compromised to its core, South Africans, those that are willing to still believe in the system, are going to be looking for, outside of Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi, glimmers of light in Parliament. People who represent the authenticity, people who represent the better hopes that they had for South Africa. You know, you and I talk about the hope for the new dawn. Hey, that new dawn. But for me, fundamentally, that's where I am. I'm looking at the outcomes, and I'm not hopeful. Well, I'm not optimistic that it's going to deliver everything that it set out to do. I think for that, maybe we should be looking more at the Mkhwanazi Commission. But in terms of the special ad hoc committee, I do hope that the members of that committee are able to synthesize to what it is that they want to extract from witnesses, and waste no time, try not to score any political points, because I think we actually underestimate how much the scoring of political points compromises the process. One just needs to look at the American way of doing inquiries, Senate Judiciary Committees, all of those things. It wastes time, it kills the process, and it ultimately makes people lose interest in it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, on the hopeful side, if some of these MPs, if we can finally get to the point where questions get asked, I can see a Julius Malema asking some really probing questions. I can see a Glynis Breitenbach putting on her prosecutor's hat and you know, doing similarly. I can see even an Mdumiseni Ntuli really asking the right questions. So there are some very capable MPs there who, when given the right opportunity, could give us some fireworks, which I'm looking forward to. Like, I'm already looking forward to Julius Malema and Mkhwanazi. Like, that question and answer session is going to be something to behold.
But I think it does beg a question, though, because the very people who are going to be doing the probing have repeatedly said on public platforms, there are things that we don't know that is happening in the country, that one day will be released, one day will be spoken about. If they are in the loop themselves, some of the members of this committee, what does that then mean for the ability for that committee to fulfill its duty? You know, one thinks of the way the leader of the EFF has of dropping explosive themselves, you know. Jacob Zuma, the former president of the country, talking about the political something that he's aware of. Members of the committee are part of these internalized political circles.
Sure.
So I think it does beg a question, you know, to what degree are they too going to be willing to out themselves? Because there's quite a lot of political overlap in the people that are in those committees. Some of the parties that are there, I'm not naming parties, come out of the ANC.
Sure.
Some of the parties that are there are closely affiliated with ANC structures and are actually benefiting from the proximity to the party. So that's where I say I'm very curious to see to what extent are they willing to spend their own political capital in this environment. Because I think we saw this with the Phala inquiry.
Yeah.
That ultimately, when it came down to voting to adopt the Phala report, parties showed their colors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Many wussed out.
Absolutely.
And so that question does have to be begged.
Yeah.
Are they really willing to lay their skin on the line?
And I worry, like, I really worry not. You know, that's my big fear, is especially the ANC members. Like, I really don't hope we have a moment where they're like, no, you can't bring this person, you can't bring the president, and you can't bring this person, because that will really sour. I think, but on the country is ready, and there's an urgency about this. But if people drop the ball on this committee, they're going to be serious political repercussions. Because, like, politically speaking, don't make it seem like you don't want to get to the truth. That's probably the most damaging thing you can do right now. Yeah, I mean, the commission today, as we speak, I don't know what's going on with these expert witnesses, to be honest. Like, I mean, no shade on the experts who obviously know what they're talking about, but, like, I want to hear from Sibiya. I want to hear from members of the Political Killings Task Team. I want to hear from the politicians. And I thought this was urgent. And now we have 2 days of, like, experts giving law lectures. Like, can we get on to the stuff we want to know?
I think it's twofold. One, it's the procedure, which is, in some ways, I think we want to do this right, and we want to make sure that there is no room for someone to actually contest the credibility of the process. So I agree with that. But on the other hand, I also do think that needs to be a recognition on the side of the commission that people for too long have been deprived of the truth. And the more we try to massage the process, keep it as dull, as far from the real witnesses who we ought to be hearing from as possible, I think what we then do is we continue to reinforce this lack of faith people have in the judiciary in South Africa. And this is a long history, tying back to as far as even the 90s, 1994, when the reforms were supposed to happen to the judiciary that ultimately didn't happen, because you saw quite a lot of those apartheid era justices and judges holding their places in the judiciary and feeding into this narrative of, okay, the judiciary is still not fully transformed, and the multiple cases that show up year on year that leave South Africans feeling disenfranchised in their own judicial system. One just needs to think of the never-ending case of Senzo Meyiwa and how South Africans have felt completely disconnected with the judiciary, saying that this is something that's been going on for a while. Where is the justice? Where is the justice? So I feel that it could feed into that, because after all, this is a special inquiry, a commission of inquiry. But I think procedure has its place. But when I put my thumb on the scale, I want the witnesses who can tell us serious things. And I think that's where every South African is. And I think in General Masamula's testimony, we saw a little bit of that.
Yeah.
We saw a little bit of that further exploration of really who were the key role players in the disbandment of this task team.
Yay, big five. Who's the big five?
Who are the big five? And of those big five, what did they know when they knew it? And who's telling the truth? You know, there was this exchange, and it was very well reported, that General Masamula asks, Commissioner Masamula actually, not General. Commissioner Masamula asks Minister Mkhunu, why is this task team disbanded? And he says, no, the president told me. But there are so many conflicting accounts that where does the truth come in? So the witnesses are important for us to synthesize the truth. Where is the truth? Who is telling the truth?
Absolutely.
But I think where we are right now, the pace is not fast enough. But I'm willing for it to continue where it is, if it means by the time the other witnesses come, the evidence leaders have more information from which that they can craft their questions, craft their narrative. But where I'm really interested to see is the political fallout that comes from this commission.
Sure, I don't think we've even begun to imagine what that's going to look like.
Because the question does have to be begged, if senior ANC officials are then, I'm talking more than Senzo Mkhunu, right now President Ramaphosa has been brought into the fold, if more and more people in the existing leadership of the ANC are fingered and are found to have been complicit, what does that mean for the ANC independent of this process? What will the NEC do? What are they willing to put on the line? Who are they willing to tap out? Because I think one thing that we've also not talked about is this political exceptionalism that seems to surround certain figures in the ANC depending on the faction of the party that they make up. You know, there's a very deliberate image painted for RET and Zuma era people from the African National Congress. And then there's a separate distinction, a separate standard built for Ramaphosa era people and people that make up his faction of the party. And so we've seen the party already not take strong action on Phala Phala. We've seen the party actually whip support for the president and his specific faction as it related to Phala Phala, as it happened at the 2022 elective conference, but also bring down the hammer on those that voted to adopt the Phala Phala report at Parliament. So that fallout, I'm interested to see what could happen.
That's such an important dimension of this that we probably haven't paid enough attention to. Also because this is going to be happening in parallel with an election campaign and in parallel, potentially, depending on how long all this goes for and the fallout, with an ANC leadership race. And I suspect that the Madlanga Commission will have a fundamental bearing on both of those future political processes. I mean, what do you think the fallout could be within the ANC?
A recall is on the table,
but
it is not going to happen now. I think my conspiracy theory is a recall is most likely to happen outside of this.
Okay.
Mainly because, to quote Batabile Dlamini, we all have our smaller nyana skeletons. I think if a recall is going to happen, I think it's probably going to happen closer to the LGEs and as a result of the local government elections. I think that the party will want to act on this, but they won't want to make it seem as though they are quickly trying to sweep it under the rug, under the cover of we're corrupt, we've been caught. We already know. But I think they are still going to try paper over this crack by finding another reason to sideline many of the implicated. Obviously, they have the step-aside resolution. It'll be very interesting to see. Are they willing to pull some of their senior players? Because where the ANC right now is they're hemorrhaging support. And they need every single person they can get to help prop up the party before the local government elections and before the 2029 elections. Because I think people forget, fundamentally where the ANC needs to be in its strategic thinking to survive now is how do we stop ourselves from hemorrhaging support? How do we stop ourselves from consistently being the face of corruption, mismanagement, the capture of the state? How do we keep support? How do we keep people liking us? And the party is not invested in a new generation of political talent. You look at the cabinet in 2000 and you look at the cabinet now, deputy ministers, DGs, people involved in government. Quite a lot of those faces are still there to this day. And so I think it will become a conflict of, do we do what's in the best interest of the country and sideline these very senior figures in the party who, albeit have been accused of all of these things, but can still muster support when we need it during elections, whatever levels of support they can get.
Sure.
Or do we do the right thing?
Wow, you've just made me see an angle that I didn't see before, which is the only way out for the ANC really is some kind of generational revolution in the party. And maybe things have got so bad that kind of thing could be on the table.
But do they have the capacity?
Well, we know that.
I didn't even say that intentionally.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the only way, right? So we had Tutugile Zuma here, who's that episode is coming out soon. She's part of a group running for regional leadership in Joburg. I think the time is now for young people in the ANC to, if they still believe in the party, bless their noble hearts, then they should act now and sweep a new generation away, sweep an old generation away, and cascade a new generation in to shift things. Because let's be quite frank, we know where this generation has got us.
I think perhaps this is a really good segue to Helen Zille. I think it's indicative of that response Anele Mdota gave her, where she was like, I did more than anyone in this room to fight apartheid. And Anele was like, but so did the people governing South Africa right now.
Sure.
So I do still question, does the ANC's Youth League have the capacity to fill the vacuum that will still exist? I mean, I think we shouldn't have a very binary way of looking at the value these people add to the ANC, the ones that are going to be swept out generationally. Because albeit there are so many skeletons in their closet, but these people are still people that fundamentally add value to the organization in that they still build up the structures, they still know the machinery of the party, they still know how to build a solid policy document for the ANC. There's so many parties that can't even get the fundamentals of that right. And I think the generational handover has sort of been disrupted because of all of these splinter organizations that have formed out of it, starting with COPE, then the EFF, now recently the MKP.
Sure.
It keeps growing and growing and growing, and the best of the party's future talent exports with all of these different parties.
Yeah.
The generational handover in some ways is delayed because the next generation of the ANC was supposed to be Julius Malema and that generation of the Youth League.
Sure.
And Ronald Lamola seems to be one of the very few from that cohort that remains in the ANC.
Yeah,
the rest are gone.
But that's actually interesting when we think generationally, like
there's a gap.
Malema left, okay, Ronald Lamola's still there, Floyd left, and Sindiso Makaka is no longer with us because of the exact political violence that this whole task team has been set up to inquire into. I mean, you mentioned Helen Zille's campaign. We've spoken about Uncle Cyril. Let's speak about Auntie Helen. I maintain that the DA is going to do very well in Joburg. I don't know whether you agree or disagree. I think they're going to be the biggest party.
Yeah. No.
Well,
I certainly do think that she does add a new dimension to the local government election. But I think that when we actually explore the Democratic Alliance in terms of what it will be able to do in Johannesburg, I think that there is a very different conversation that needs to happen away from the campaign and the very effective media strategy that they have.
Sure.
I think that, yes, Helen Zille makes Joburg a very high-stakes election for every party that is contesting.
Absolutely.
But she needs to be practical, and the DA needs to be practical about who they're going to govern with, because they're not going to get over 50%. They're going to have to govern in a coalition.
That's for sure.
And when they look at the figures, the very people that they're campaigning to throw out are the only people they can work with, and that is the ANC. So that's a dimension that I think
you don't think
they must be very careful about.
You don't think they can twist Action SA's arm in Joburg?
I mean, Herman Mashaba did say recently that he'd be open to working with the Democratic Alliance. But Action SA and the DA are like the Hatfields and the McCoys. You know, they can be a negotiated settlement for a few weeks, but fundamentally, one keeps trying to eat into the other.
Yeah.
And because of that, it creates for an explosive relationship. So I do think fundamentally the DA will end up working with the ANC in Johannesburg.
Very interesting.
Because there are also other dynamics that would feed into the ability for them to form a working coalition in Johannesburg with the ANC, and that is the fact that they themselves, if they're looking at government in 2029, who apart... Okay, this is not going to earn me fans in these parties. Rise Mzansi is potentially a here today, gone tomorrow party. So is Bosa. Action SA did not perform as well as some had expected them to. And there is no growth and development in that party, in the sense that we are not seeing the type of outcomes from Action SA that they promised their electorate. And they are not a party that is considered a main player. So as we get closer to 2029, people are going to be looking for main players. And the main players are the GNU parties, albeit some of them still going to be significant, but not significant enough to get the DA over the line. And so outside of those, the only other party they can go to is the ANC, because National Coloured Congress, we already know, they are not DA fans, and they would not be willing to work with the DA. The EFF, not a chance. MKP, not a chance. And I think that's another factor people don't talk about for Johannesburg. The fact that the MKP can actually pull one hell of an upset in Johannesburg, because there are quite a lot of disenfranchised, disillusioned ANC supporters who are looking to hurt the ANC but not reward the DA, and are trying to find a home. And MKP has been growing in its polling consistently. They were at somewhere below 12% in a recent polling done by, I think it was Social Research Foundation, and they've gone up about 6 points.
Yeah, they were at 18 at the last one.
18
nationally, yeah.
And that is
the leaked DA poll puts them at around, I think, 12 in Joburg as well.
But that is progress. They're larger than where the EFF is, and that's 11%.
Yeah.
So they're growing, and they're growing steadily. They're the fastest growing party in South Africa.
Yeah.
And so because of that, that adds another spanner in the works, because they're going to eat from the ANC. I think they're going to eviscerate from the IFP.
But this is why I think that the ANC is facing a catastrophe in Joburg, because MK, assuming it survives till the election, eats into the ANC. EFF probably also eats into the ANC. But then the DA from the other side eats into the ANC. I think Action SA from the other side also eats into the ANC. I think the PA potentially eats into the ANC. So this could be a serious crisis for the ANC if they're not careful. And the reason I also say this is that it's all about the fundamental governance of Joburg at the end of the day. If Joburg was humming and streetlights were working and water was flowing, the ANC would be above 50. But they've laid the ground for a potential revolution against the ANC in Joburg, which I think could fundamentally remake South African politics. But as you say, then the DA might just bring them in back
back to life.
Yeah, from their weakened position.
As you're saying that, I was reminded of the thing that it was reported Floyd Jibambo said to, whilst he was still deputy president of the EFF, that he said to the ANC during negotiations for the then GNU, and that is, you're going to die anyway, rather die in our hands. Now, that is potentially what the ANC is facing in Johannesburg. They need to choose in whose hands do they choose to surrender. Because that is where they're headed, whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
The image of the party is too tainted for a revolutionary comeback. I just preach that a new generation would be needed, but even that generation cannot undo the damage done to the party's image. And so their only hopes is someone that ropes them in.
Yeah.
And for now, the only party on the horizon that looks like it would be willing to do that and would be willing to actually co-govern with them is the DA. But there's also another component that I think quite a lot of people forget when it comes to Johannesburg and the DA. Yeah. And local municipal coalitions with the DA. And that is the factor that Action SA, the PA, and all other parties that have worked with the DA at local level complain that the DA has a problem of bullying the other parties into getting their way. Yeah. In the GNU, we've seen the DA huff and puff and threaten to blow the house down. But they've struggled to bully the ANC because fundamentally the ANC has been the bigger partner. And it's also been someone that I think has been a more reasonable, rational partner for them to talk to. But at local level, it was the criticism that Action SA gave the DA here in Joburg. It was the criticism that even the EFF gave the DA upon the departure of Herman Mashaba
Yeah.
here in Johannesburg. That the reason no one wants
Even
to work
in
with even in Tshwane with the Ancelius Spring,
Yeah.
is that the DA has a problem of bullying smaller parties into doing what they want. And so for smaller parties, it's harder for them to work with the DA in that context.
Yeah.
So it's a very tough makeup that they have in Joburg. But for a working council to happen, they need to change their tack. And this is where I'm concerned with Helen Zille, because the strong arming tactics that are indicative of the DA stem from the person who's been in charge of the DA. And there is no doubt that Helen Zille has been in charge. John Steenhuisen might be the federal leader of the Democratic Alliance, but there is no question in people's heads who actually runs the Democratic Alliance. And so in that context, is there a shift in how they approach partnership? Is there a shift in how they're willing to work with people that they consider non-entities in the political spectrum?
But also, with Helen, who had announced that she is going to step down on SMWX, I don't think she'd said it anywhere before, from the federal chair position. We also get a slightly different DA that comes out of that election, because Zille is going to be dividing or devoting her whole focus to Joburg. And then that means that there's a new CEO, real political CEO in the DA, and it's interesting who that might be, because the DA took a very different direction when Helen Zille momentarily stepped away from its leadership. You had the Maimane era, which took the DA in a completely different place. It's been yanked back in a different direction. But now we'll have to see a slightly new DA, plus their Congress comes up in April. So again, a lot of interesting DA developments going on.
I'm of the opinion, because I don't want to say how I know this, but I'm of the belief that Helen Zille already knows who her successor is going to be. And that is someone who shares her view of the Democratic Alliance and shares her view of how their road to 2029 and beyond that needs to be paved. Because
do we know who that is?
Oh, I'm not saying.
Okay, yeah, it's fine.
I'm not saying.
It's fine.
But I think what we know now about power is that when you have it, you want to wield it. And there's no one who has shown that they can wield power within a party better than Helen Zille.
Sure, yeah.
So I don't buy
Jacob Zuma's pretty good as well. With 17 SGs in like 1 year.
I mean, like even President Ramaphosa's batting average in the ANC is not that bad either.
Sure, yeah.
But I think specifically when it comes to Helen Zille, we know that the DA wants to give an image of democracy, internal democracy in how they do their politics. But it comes down to who you know, who backs you, and how high up can you ascend on the basis of who you know and who backs you within the party.
Sure.
And this was a massive criticism Liam Jacobs gave of the Democratic Alliance when he made his transition to the Patriotic Alliance. So I think where the DA is now and where the succession planning for Helen Zille is now is they already know who is going to contest for it and who's probably going to win it.
Both. So federal chair and leader.
Yeah, John Steenhuisen's challenging. I don't like his chances. I don't like his chances. Yes, he delivered government and he's by far their best fundraiser. But what more does John Henry Steenhuisen have to offer to the Democratic Alliance? He doesn't. Throughout his tenure, he's not offered an image of decisive leadership. When the party needs a strong, decisive voice, they turned to Helen Zille. Even with the GNU, by far, the GNU is one of the few things that's actually keeping him in his position as leader safe, because within the party, he has staked his lot with the fact that the DA will benefit from being in the government of national unity. That is one side of the Democratic Alliance, whilst the other side thinks that they shouldn't actually be there. That this was a bad experiment, it was a bad idea. Yes, we were trying to keep a doomsday coalition out, but fundamentally, we should not be there because it's bad for us and our base doesn't like it. And the way I know this is that Steenhuisen showed his cards in the White House. He said that to Donald Trump, that the only reason we are here is to keep them out. And as a leader of the Democratic Alliance, he spoke from that position. So I think for him, his chances depend on how well their time in the GNU does. I think one of the big things that he's watching is the replacement of Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry.
Yeah, sure.
Andrew Whitfield was fired.
Gee, that's taking ages though, as well.
But also, President Ramaphosa is waiting in the wings for them to fumble that appointment, and then he can put in his own person. And so that, in terms of the DA leader position, there still is a question mark. There is no clear, determined person who can get it. There's someone I think is going to challenge. I'm not going to say who it is.
Okay.
Because a lot of DA people like watching political podcasts. And I don't want to cause problems. But when that announcement does happen, I think that other person has a pretty good chance of unseating John Steenhuisen.
I'm looking at 3 people in the DA. I can talk.
Yeah, you can talk.
DA people know I've been...
I don't want to burn my contacts.
Yeah, and I just interviewed Helen, so there we go. No, we've got... I've always said I'm looking at Jordan Hill-Lewis. I'm looking at Siviwe Kwagube, and I'm looking at Solly Malatsi as three potential challengers. I also think John, I wouldn't underestimate John, because I've underestimated John many times, and he's proven me wrong. So obviously he's a contender. There's no doubt about that. So those are, and the reason is I always look at who's high in the party and who's high in government at the same time, which shows you have quite a powerful voice. Siviwe, I would say Solly Malatsi is high in the party and high in government. So that's why I think Siviwe, obviously quite high in government. And that's raised her stature. And then we've got Jordan, who's done well in Cape Town, and is growing in popularity. So that's my field. Yeah, but I could be wrong. And there's also chair. So So any 2 of those 4 or other people I've not quite seen could fill those vacancies.
Yeah, but I think the party's due for a shake-up in many positions. One of your contenders, I actually think they might throw to replace Solim Simanga in Gauteng. Because I think part of what this 2026 elective Congress that they have will be about, their federal Congress, will be about what is the vision for the Democratic Alliance in this new era for the Democratic Alliance.
Yeah, and how do they potentially position themselves as the biggest party in South Africa? And
who are the people that can get them there?
Yeah.
So for that, I think they're going to look at rolling out some of that talent in different spaces. But hey, if he pulls it off, I'll join you and be like, yeah, I underestimated that guy, but
sure,
I don't like his chances. But when I just tying back to Joburg, because I want to zoom in a bit more on the governability factor. Yeah. Which after the election, I think people now need to start thinking about pre the election, but after the election is going to be the largest determiner of will Helen stay or will Helen go very quickly in Johannesburg. And that is in governing and in composing her executive, municipal executive. Who are the people from other parties that are going to form part of that coalition that she's willing to co-opt in? Yeah. Because I doubt she'll give parties the level of control that they think they'll have in consulting with her about her executive. I think she'll want to overreach. And the reason I say that is because she understands the scale of the challenge in Johannesburg. Sure. But one thing that cannot happen in Joburg is trying to create one of those Cape Town cabinets of white men. Like this city will not accept. So I think the DA needs to show a certain level of wisdom if they get into that position, because it's just going to be hugely anticlimactic if they double down on an unrepresentative government. But also the ANC needs to be very strategic about who they're putting forward, because they're having their regional conference. Yeah. Tada Morero looks like he's going to win to be Joburg regional chair. But just because you're the regional chair doesn't mean you're going to be the mayoral candidate.
Yeah, and I think he will be challenged as well.
So
I'm not sure he's going to win. Let's see.
I'm hearing he's looking strong, but I think where the ANC is they need to be very strategic about who they put forward, because they're going to need a strong candidate to field against Helen, so that they're in a space where, yes, they're going to fall, but where they land in a space where at least they're not out in the cold.
Tata Morero is not that person.
He's not that person. Because I was actually looking at how he got there to be regional chair. And it's actually rather tragic because of the ones that were either removed or died.
Yeah, no, it's actually quite sad, yeah.
So him ending up there is also a very strange coincidence.
Sure.
That now the party has to sort of field better talent in Johannesburg. And so they need to be very strategic about this. I mean,
they won't.
Capacity dololo.
Exactly. I remember before the 2016 election, there was this talk, no, we're going to bring the best leaders in the party to run cities, and it just never happened. But yeah, no, fascinating insights. Let's end with Gayton McKenzie, because Gayton has come out and said they're going to withdraw from every local government position if Kenny Kunene is not installed after the scandal broke out about him as MMC for transport, and an intention to resign from the GNU. What do you make of this? Because it actually kind of links what happens on the local level to the national level. And I also wanted to just also say that the reason I think this Zille thing in Joburg is very important is that we mustn't forget that if the DA is in a position to govern Joburg, suddenly their leverage in the GNU also shifts dramatically. And they can turn around and say, this 6 minister thing that you gave us, these crumbs, we now want a real slice. And the ANC, in its desperation to cling on to some of Joburg, might just be like, okay, especially if they've lost city after city after city. The DA can actually come back and say, like Gayton has said in a different kind of context, give us a lot in the cities, or we want a lot nationally. So the leverage in the coalitions across the country is going to shift significantly after this election. As Gayton has shown already, because he's using the local to affect the national and vice versa.
Guys, I'm always scared to talk about the Patriotic Alliance. They have an army online.
But we've interviewed Gayton on this show. No,
the thing about the Patriotic Alliance, it's very difficult to actually understand Gayton McKenzie's tack. Because he said that, and then 24 hours later tweets out, responding to Mkhwanazi Commission from the MKP, that
they're going to support Cyril Ramaphosa.
He supports President Ramaphosa. If the motion of no confidence comes, he's going to support the president, but he doesn't support the ANC.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of strangeness to how Gayton McKenzie is operating his party. I don't think it's a valuable position for them to say, no, you either put our guy back or we leave nationally. Because whether he likes to admit it or not, his ministerial position has elevated his stature, it's elevated his press. The party benefits from him being in cabinet. If he was a normal parliamentarian, he would be struggling to get the momentum and the limelight that is keeping the PA constantly in the discourse of South African politics and the general body politic.
Yeah.
So,
and similarly,
I think it's a miscalculation if they pull out.
Similarly, the Kenny Kunene thing is like a real serious damaging scandal. Like, you can't just have your own internal investigation and then say, okay, done, everything's fine now. Like, South Africans have genuine questions about someone like Katiso Molefe, who's really been at the center of these Mkhwanazi allegations. And spin isn't going to work in this case. Like, putting Kenny Kunene back in Joburg would like damage the ANC so much before the election. I just don't see how, but shame, the ANC has like only terrible choices at this point.
And it's the fact that the investigation is not concluded. So say Kenny goes back and then more damaging information comes out. You put someone tainted back in, you backed them, you were willing to pull out of a whole GNU because of them. And now you've essentially thrown the baby out with the bathwater. What more do you have to leverage and play with? here, if you're the PA and if you're Gayton McKenzie and if you're the ANC in Johannesburg. So that's why I think it's a miscalculation. He shouldn't do it. And I expect we will see a backtrack, because I think even people who have Gayton McKenzie's ear are telling him, yes, he's your friend and you have enormous amounts of loyalty for him, but you cannot stake the political fortunes of the Patriotic Alliance on someone whose status has not yet been wrapped up. Like you say, the questions are not answered. And there's still more people that have to talk. So what really is the tack here?
Yeah, what happens when Katiso Molefe goes to the Madlanga Commission and gets asked questions about the arrest?
I think it's a miscalculation on that front. But
to their credit,
yeah,
like that's leverage though. That's how you use leverage. Like every single coalition agreement, like I say, that kind of move is going to get easier and easier for opposition parties to pull, the weaker and weaker the ANC becomes.
But it's also a thing of, what if they call your bluff?
Yeah.
Because I think one thing we saw with the removal of the deputy trade and industry minister, one thing we saw with the expropriation bill, we saw with so many other bills that the ANC signed, is that they're not scared to sometimes call your bluff. And the bigger partners in an arrangement are learning that what if we actually call their bluff? What's the worst they can actually do?
Yeah, sure.
Because there are other parties waiting in the wings to enter into the GNU.
Sure.
I mean, the ANC had an NEC to actually discuss a reconfiguration of the GNU. So they have the leverage. But if they pull that trigger, where does that leave them? I think that's where they need to keep their thinking.
Yeah.
Because as time goes on, it won't be, no, let's try and make this work. It'll be, okay, election season's coming. How do we score points?
Sure.
And maybe removing them from relevance in the GNU is a tack. Because, and I'm of the opinion, this is why the ANC was so masterful in the GNU negotiation. They gave themselves the MasterCard to be able to play whatever move they wanted and have limited backlash on it. Obviously, with the Democratic Alliance, there's a certain ability for them to play that card, because if the DA pulls out, there is this perception, which has been confirmed to an extent by the markets, that no, there'll be a run on the rand and whatever. I love Nomvula Mokonyane. So the rand falls will pick it up. But I think the smaller parties need to think carefully, because where we're heading now, post 2029, they want to have as many friends as possible and as few enemies as they can, because the landscape is going to shift. 2026 things are going to shift. And that old expression, politics makes for strange bedfellows. So the PA, I encourage them strongly to seriously reconsider this push to pull out.
Well, Otsile Nkadimeng, it's been a joy to speak to you. Your debut on SMWX is done. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us as well. And stay tuned, because I think we're going to hear a lot more from Otsile on this channel. Like, share, subscribe. Help us get to 400,000 subscribers. Comment down below. And as always, keep it locked on SMWX. Aye.